Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts or Spotify. On Android, go to Spotify. If you want content for the rest of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, you can also check out the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also check out 5 Reasons Sports. So let's spell that one out, 5reasonsports.com. We also have Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge, 10 different channels plus stage shows. All the content that we used to put on Twitter, we put it here. We also take everything decent from Twitter that's there, and we separate it into different channels here. So this is a one-stop shop, everything you need, $2.99 per month, the place for the most heat anywhere. Also, Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E, put down your 5, get your 50. WNBA All-Star Game coming up. You're going to want to play that. MLB season is resuming, and, of course, get ready for football season. So check it out. It's Prize Picks. Use the code F-I-V-E. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Still waiting for Summer League to end. The Heat have one more game coming up, on Thursday. And we will have coverage of that on playback.tv/5RSN. I know we give you guys a lot to remember. We are going to focus on one specific Heat topic today. Two players, Kel'el Ware and Nikola Jovic. And we're going to debate what is the best way to handle training camp with the two of them. Now, here are the two different situations. Kel'el Ware frustrated his coaching staff. That's putting it mildly, which led to Erik Spoelstra doing something I haven't heard him do since like a small call out of Dion Waiters in 2019. You and I were both there up in Palm Beach for training camp, and Dion wasn't there much longer. And prior to that, Hassan Whiteside, of course, Michael Beasley. Those are kind of the only names I can really think of Spoelstra. And even with Bees, because it was so early in Spo's career, he didn't really do a lot of it publicly. Calls out Kel'el Ware, and then Ware has two really impressive performances in Summer League. Responds on the court, says the right things in response to Ira's questions. I was there as well. Off the court, and I think everybody's feeling a little bit better about it, that he responded the right way, said he took the criticism to heart. And he played with effort those last two games, particularly the last one. I know that the first one right afterwards got more attention, but the last one I thought he played really hard. Doesn't do everything perfect yet, but you saw him set better screens. I thought as far as two hands on rebounds, the kind of stuff that they want to see in terms of sort of effort and focus and all that was there. Now, the reason we're talking about Nikola Jovic, though, is because when Spo was asked about Ware and clearly had a prepared answer, there are levels to this, and then went on for 2-3 minutes on him. I asked next about Jovic, and Spo's eyes lit up, and he talked about how, well, the difference in professionalism between Jovic when he first came in a couple of years ago to now is night and day. And he said, then he sort of added, that's why I'm encouraged about Ware. But then he turned it back to Jovic again and spoke about how him playing for a tough national team coach. He's going to play for his national team again this summer, and this time hopefully gets more of a rotation role, which is what Spoelstra was talking about, because last year that was curtailed by the injury he had right before he left America. Spo seems really, I don't know, like excited about Jovic. Now, Alex, Ware's under contract, Jovic is under contract, but Jovic is due the extension first. So there's also decisions to make. And when I asked Spoelstra about Jovic and finding a specific role, he said that will happen. It was kind of happening before he got hurt. Now, of course, that was Jovic coming off the bench, whereas he had started the season as a starter and was yanked out of the starting lineup pretty quickly. Let me ask you this. After listening to Spo and watching Ware, not what do you think they should do? What do you think Spoelstra is leaning towards right now as far as a starter, assuming that Wiggins, Powell, and Hero are going to be the other three, and Bam are going to be the other four starters?
Honestly, I think he will probably start off with Ware. Right, I think he will keep the status quo there, and give him the chance to prove himself. As long as, you know what I mean, he approaches training camp right. I'm not saying he will, like, no matter what he does, it's his. I don't feel that way. I actually said on one of the shows that I did with Brady that, and we agreed that it should be a competition, right? So maybe he doesn't earn it over Nico, but I do think if I had to bet right now today, I would bet that it's the status quo and that Kel'el is still the starter. I think he stuck with it, even though it wasn't a great fit at times. Not necessarily only because of like Bam and Kel'el and the weird, like the fact that neither of them are necessarily like even average shooters at this point. But also just in general, the lack of offense and spacing they had, specifically like playmaking and spacing, right? That they just didn't have on the roster. So now with Powell there, you do get just a boost of scoring, a boost of shooting. I'm leaning towards Powell starting. Even though I do see the case for maybe a 6-man role, I still think I'm expecting to see Powell and Hero start. I'm expecting to see Bam and Ware start. After that, I'm not 100% sure. I guess Wiggins.
Well, right now, if Wiggins is there, he's starting. I don't think there's
but I guess right? I'm saying you can make the case for Davion too. I would probably bet Wiggins. And yeah, like I think Nico was looking really comfortable off the bench. And so I think we continue off of that, especially because he started looking good there. And I know in the last game, they lost by so much. The season came to an ugly end, so nobody even remembers at this point. And it's almost like halfway kind of, garbage time, right? But Nico played well. He finally, after coming back from injury, and I think there's something there to build off of. Like, he's in general a high field player. So I think Spo is a guy who likes those type of guys, and I think we're gonna go back to what kind of what was working at the end there, which was Nico before he got hurt coming off the bench, and where I think with a lot of caution will be the starter.
Okay, now here's why I think that you're right that they will start off with Ware as the thought process in training camp, but I could see it shifting by the end of training camp. I think that the way they're trying to handle Ware, it seems to me, is they see the talent. They know Bam wants to play with a traditional big, even though Ware still needs to put on more weight, but he's put on some, and now he's learning to play with it. I think they want to at least try it. I'm with you on that. Now, of course, they did end the season with it last year, and they lost the last 2 games by 92 points. So I know Nico was coming back from injury and all of that, but also Spo pulled Ware off the court during, the game 4, right? So I feel like they're going to start that way because I think they're going to dangle the carrot, okay? And I think also they know that Jovic, who's been through this before, it's easy to explain to him kind of what we're trying to do. We want to get you a role with the ball in your hands, coming off the bench. Maybe again, if Mitchell's coming off the bench too, they have a couple of handlers there, and then they'll stagger lineups as Spoelstra typically does. So I feel like it's easier to have that conversation with Jovic, who has said before he doesn't really care about starting, and he wants to finish games. Okay, that's really the goal for him this year, I think, is for him to be in a position to finish games. And I think he would have been more in that mix last year, obviously, without the injuries. So I think that's where they'll start it. But I also think that they should make it clear that's not guaranteed. I think that it's a carrot. You're starting as a starter, but we're going to see how this goes. Because I do think from a roster construction standpoint, it kind of makes more sense to start Jovic now, simply because they don't have a backup 5. And the way that the roster is constructed, because I'm not seeing Golden as a backup 5 as a they got to go get somebody to play in front of him, I think. I mean, maybe he has some potential, but as I watched him, he's got slow feet. You can't really put him out on the perimeter. They tried the Ware Golden thing in the last game that I covered out in Vegas. They actually had okay results from in terms of the scoreboard, but I don't think that's something they would lean into. And I don't know that Golden is really ready, honestly, to get minutes at the NBA level. So they need to either get another big, which it doesn't seem at the moment they're inclined to do. Rashawn Holmes is out there, but again, then you're talking about more tax issues, all the other things that come with it. If you look at their roster, if you bring in Ware off the bench, then you have Bam, you have Jovic, and then Ware comes into play with one of the two of them. And you're a little bit more balanced in that sense, I would think. And I'm just concerned about, say, Bam and Ware getting early foul trouble, and then you're playing Jovic heavy minutes at the 5. That concerns me a little bit. So that's the one thing I would say. And I know they tried to they had Jovic working at the 5 in G League a couple of years ago. He didn't love it, but they were trying to get him accelerated minutes. In your view, does roster construction, because I think from personality standpoint, makes sense to say, okay, Kel'el, you're the starter, but we're watching it, okay? And Nico could take that job. If you want that job, there's obviously opportunity for somebody else to take it from you. But I think from just in terms of rotation balance, maybe it makes more sense to start Jovic. Is there anything to that?
I think they could get to that if they just feel that the Bam and Ware thing and the starting lineup is just not working out how they want it to, right? And they're just like, okay, and I don't think it'll only be because of roster construction, because I really do think, like, and again, I've said this on other pods, but they should, like, it would be nice if they got another depth piece there at the 5, right? It would be useful. But I do think at the end of the day, I think they're going to stagger Bam and Ware. Even if they start him, I think after the starting unit, right, like whichever one is subbed out first, whatever, right? I think one of them will always be on the floor at all times, right? Like they're both 5s. I know people don't want to hear that. Some people think Bam is a straight up 4, whatever, right? However you feel about it, Spo will play Bam and Ware as 5s. I do think just in general, like if you're very thin there at that spot, but I think the rotation 5 minutes will come down to Bam and Ware in the regular season, unless there's like an injury issue of some sort. But other than that, like regarding Nico and his spot in the rotation, I don't think it should be based on roster construction. I do think you got to consider more than that the fit with the other guys in that starting lineup. So if you're assuming that Powell and Hero both start, I know you're of the thought that maybe they start Davion over Powell. But even I've
turned on that a little bit. I will say I was of that thought, but the way they're talking up Norm right now, I don't see them bringing him off the bench in a contract year. I'm not. I think it does make some sense to start Davion, but I also can then make the case, and we'll get to more of this on the other side, that if you're going to start Powell, I like the lineup with Jovic because I just think you have there's a lot of offensive potential to that. I think with Nico's playmaking, Hero and Powell playing off the ball, Wiggins and Bam kind of as secondary actions, being options there. Wiggins, doing some cutting, again, getting to sort of mid-range spots, maybe a little bit later in the clock. And of course, Bam getting to that jumper at the foul line. Like, I feel like there's something there. And then you're bringing Davion and Ware, kind of a defensive energy group off the bench, provided that Ware's giving you the energy. So I can see it both ways there, but I think right now the lean is that they're going to start Norm Powell. He's their big acquisition. They're going to start him right from the very beginning. We know that Tyler's starting, and then we'll kind of see where it goes. All right, I've got a couple more questions for you on the other side of this, but let's get to our great sponsor, Real Estate Shop, 2 P's and an E, realestateShopFL.com. Javier, Amanda, and their team, they do a great job. But it's really a family business. Married couple that they know what your family needs. And now down here in South Florida, it's complicated to find a house. Interest rates going all over the place. Obviously, there's a little bit more inventory than there used to be before. So if you're trying to sell your house, you should have them list it because they'll work through the entire process for you. They got open houses all through South Florida, primarily in Broward County, east to west, every weekend. Check them out at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram or go to realestateShopFL.com. Okay. Jovic specifically, let's dial down on that a little bit. Is it better for him to start than come off the bench in terms of his skill set? Because we've been concerned about him starting and getting pigeonholed into a spot-up shooter. Now, I'm saying it doesn't have to be the case. You could have Powell and Hero doing a lot of the spotting up, and Nico, doing a lot of the handling. But I don't know that they'll lean into that. It seems like Nico does most of the handling in transition, not necessarily in the half court. Do you think it's better for him to just have the freedom to be the guy coming off the bench, as opposed to being potentially a fifth wheel in the starting lineup?
Probably. I think that's what they'll lean into. But I don't want to, like, when I say that, I don't mean that I don't want to see those lineups too. I want to see those units that you're talking about there with him, Tyler, Norm, and Bam. I think that would be interesting. And maybe the other piece is Wiggins. Maybe it's Haywood. Maybe it's even Davion. I don't know. Right. Just in general. But like, I get what you're saying of like, you want to see these offensive pieces together with Bam and just see like, it's a very different dynamic, right, to what they've had in the past. Right. Especially just like with the skill set that Norm brings. Norm is nowhere near the player that Jimmy was. But he is a very different type of player, and so there should be a different look to their offense, and maybe it comes out to a result that is more movement heavy, right? If there's going to be more stuff based on off-ball movement and shooting gravity with Norm, because he's one of the best 10 or so best shooters in the league by volume and percentage, that favors Nico's style of play. But like you're saying, I think it's like, if you're going to go into a lineup like that, I think Nico needs to have a baseline level of ball handling there. Because to me, that's where like the fun of it is kind of like deriving from, where it's, okay, Tyler and Powell can both be coming off of screens and creating just a ton of problems for the defense. Like, that can be a real like potent lineup. I think you would have to give it some time. I don't know if it was something that would work right away, as we saw like Nico got sent to the bench last year after that starting lineup experiment that we all knew wouldn't work, failed. But Powell's a very different player than Terry, right? Like,
right.
And they didn't really give Nico the ball to facilitate there. So and what you're saying is right, though. It's like, even if they do quote unquote give him the ball, I think more often than not, it'll probably look like him bringing the ball up the court, making that first pass and likely getting out of the way. And, like, he's fine being a connective player, but I do think they would have to find ways to like make sure that like Tyler and Powell are coming off ball. Nico is being used in a way that can, like, show everybody what he can do making reads. Make it like, have Tyler and Powell come off, make Nico have to make a read after Bam sets the screen, right? Like, I think that could be a really nice look, as opposed to last year with that starting lineup that they tried to force. Terry is a one-on-one player, right? You still had Jimmy out there. I think this, like what we're talking about here, this lineup is much easier to work, like, and much easier to kind of even just imagine working. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Tyler, Terry, Jimmy, Nico, Bam, like it really didn't make sense from the start.
Too many guys who needed the ball in their hands all the time. And that's what you mentioned, the big difference between Rozier, even if he was playing at a high level, which he wasn't. But even if he was playing at his best level takes the ball out of others' hands.
But I will say,
also
Terry
dribbles
was like
down the clock.
He was a decent off-ball player next to LaMelo, but that completely like went out the window
when he got here. Yeah, exactly. And that's why the thing is with Powell, again, his off-ball numbers are terrific. The other thing that's really good with Powell, I saw that quote-unquote LeBron stat. It's not based on LeBron, but that was posted by one of the stat sites that as a secondary ball handler, Powell was best in the league last year. Wiggins was actually third, which made me question it a little bit, because I didn't think Wiggins was that great handling once he got to Miami. But that's just something to consider, that he does have some of those skills in his game, which I think will make it easier on others. All right, to close this up, though, so we talk about what's best for Jovic, and then there's the other factor, what's best for Ware. And I think it's kind of when we had these conversations about Jovic and when he should play, and I made the case, and I tried to make the same case. Well, before we get to that, but they should, and they did have success doing that. But my whole thing on Jovic was, part of when deciding when to play a young player is what's best for the team, but it's also what's best for the player's development. Sometimes those are not the same thing. And sometimes you want to make a guy earn it, and it seems like they did that with Jovic, and to a degree, they're satisfied with the way that's working in terms of him, again, not the health, okay, because and a lot of that is just bad luck. But in terms of him putting weight on and his attitude and everything, that they've seen what they wanted to see. So they feel like their first 2 years of development for him, even though it was frustrating for Heat fans at the time, they feel that's worked. With Ware, they gave him an opportunity to start sooner than they did Jovic, okay, and put him in the lineup. And now it seems like they're trying to pull back a little bit because he got sort of a big head about it, okay? And not that he's a bad guy. He's not, okay, at all, okay? If you dealt with Ware at all, you know that. It's just that he got, maybe a little too cool for school, okay, particularly with Summer League, and that seemed to be some of what was going on there. So I'll just ask you this. For the development of Kel'el Ware, do you think it's just specifically, not the team, do you think it's better to bring him off the bench at times this year or at the start of the season and make him earn his way up? Or do you think it's better to let him sort of learn on the job out, for everybody to see from minute one of game one?
So I'm going to do this right now just off of like the premise that Wiggins is still here. Just like,
yes.
Until further notice. Either way, like I think my answer would still stay the same, but just to make it clear, because I do think like that's part of the answer here, right? Let's say I think like what you're asking here, I would be okay with them bringing him off the bench if it's because it's just not working in the starting lineup. If they're just like, okay, the pick and roll defense has not improved. Okay, you're still not setting physical screens. Okay, you're boxing out. It's just, like you're letting guys who are smaller than you get in front of you and outwork you, on the boards. Like if that stuff becomes like a real issue in the regular season, I think that is easily a solution that happens, because guess what? Like who do you think is going to get sent to the bench first, right? You think it's going to be a guy in Wiggins who, again, he played terrible against Cleveland. Like, I don't want to take away from that. But I think he's better than that just based off of, like, history, right? I don't think he's that bad. You're not going to be playing the Cleveland Cavaliers at 100%, every night in the regular season. What we saw of Wiggins before the playoffs, right? If he is that guy again, he's not going to be the one getting sent to the bench. It's not going to be Hero, and it's likely not going to be Powell, who, like, if we're being real, is man, I didn't even want to say this one today, but is
I know where this is
the same
going.
level of player that Tyler
is. Yeah.
Right. More or less. Right. Like, I'm not here to like even try to compare them, whatever. Like,
and they had very comparable first halves last year.
Exactly. And they were both like Powell maybe should have been an all-star, maybe not. They gave it to Harden with the cachet he has and all that. But Powell,
before Powell got hurt, you could argue that his numbers were actually even a little better than Tyler's, but they tailed off in the second half. Yes.
And he's averaged 20 plus in the league before. Not like several times, but he's done it. He's a guy who's won, like, just in general, much more proven and much more of like the stuff that they've been begging for, like offensively. Right. Like, I just think in general, like, Ware is the guy who, when you come down to it, like, if it's not working and a lot of the mistakes are still there, it's not that he's a scapegoat. It's just like, that's the obvious piece that you move, because he's probably the weak link at that point. And I feel like people think that I try to like I bring up these same issues with Ware over and over again. Like it's some luxury that he needs to be like perfect with. No, it's not, it's not that.
It's the basic stuff.
But it's like, there has to be some sort of like the effort can't just be with the stat line stuff.
Yeah.
As much as I want to say it, like as much as like I don't want to sound like I'm taking away credit from that stuff, because it's great. Like, that's awesome. But like, I guarantee you that's like the stuff that Spo is mad about, right? Without talking to him personally. Like, if I'm seeing it, come on, man. Not like, come on. You think Spo is not like he transferred from schools in the past, like for similar reasons. So just in general, like I think he would be the guy that gets moved to the bench. And we already saw like a pattern that might indicate that with how he was treated in fourth quarters, right? Where like he was not often the closer, or like he would be taken off the floor, and I think the closing stuff might be an even more like intriguing conversation as far as Nico versus Ware, and also whether or not, like, if he goes against a team that isn't playing two bigs, he just goes back to leaning Spo small ball, right? Where like it's Tyler, Powell, Bam.
I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. I know Heat fans don't want to hear it, but I think the closing lineup most nights is going to be Bam, Wiggins, Powell, Hero, and Davion.
Could totally see it.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting.
And
I want to see that lineup in general.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to be, which is why we could have the Jovic versus Ware debate about closing. But I think most nights they're both not going to close. All right, that's it for today. More podcasts coming. We're taking suggestions on the podcast channel, podcast review channel on Off the Floor. So if you're subscribed there, we took this one from there. We'll give the credit in the next episode.
I'm sorry, I never actually gave an answer. Yes, it would be better for Ware's development if he stayed in the starting lineup with the best players on the floor, and he just actually got better playing in those high, crucial minutes. Okay. Sorry, I just realized I didn't answer. I just wanted to clean that up there.
It's fine. We got it in after 25 minutes. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.